Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Missouri State Esport Federation Winter Bash Finals. Today's game of choice is going to be Apex Legends, a wonderful battle royale genre game where 20 teams with 3 players each, up to a total of 60 players, all drop onto a wonderful, lush, vibrant, beautiful map and attempt to duke it out until only one team is left standing. Today, we have gathered the top 20 teams from across the state of Missouri to compete in a championship run. These 20 teams will all be playing 6 games today, 3 of them being on the Storm Point map, 3 of them being on World's Edge. The way that these teams will be competing is by dropping onto the map and attempting to accumulate points. These points, there's several different ways that they're going to be accumulating them. The closest and easiest way to do it is via placement. Since 20 teams are dropping at any given time, when they inevitably lose 3 of their players, they will be eliminated. And depending on at what point they get eliminated, they will get scaling points. So if they're one of the first 5 teams that drop out from the game in 16th to 20th place, they will receive 0 placement points for that game. If they end 11th to 15th, they will get 1 point. From 8th to 10th, they will get 2 points. From 6th to 7th, they will receive 3 points. From 5th place, they'll get 4 points. 4th place, 5 points. 3rd place, 7 points. 2nd place, 9 points. And 1st place will be worth 12 points. Now, what that all means we'll get into in a little bit, but just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that this 6-game span, each of these teams will be attempting to accumulate the most points possible and try to get the win off of that. And the second way that they're going to accumulate points is going to be based around eliminations. When one of the players in the game gets a knockdown, they remove all the shields and health from a player. They will enter a secondary state called the downed position, in which they will reset their health bar, and that will slowly drain over time, or they might just get hit by a stray bullet, maybe get eliminated that way. The second that player who is downed is eliminated from the game and they cease all actions, that team that got the original down will receive a point. So each of these 20 teams, which I'm going to start by listing out here, are starting at 0 again. They're all going to attempt to get as many placement points and elimination points as possible in order to be the best team in Missouri. But there's a few different win conditions that these teams are going to have, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But just to give each team their flowers, here are our state representatives for the Winter Bash Finals. We've got Francis Howell North, which by far had the strongest regular season with 180 accumulated points across 10 regular season drops. We had the second place regular season team being Blue Springs South's number 2 team. Every single team had the opportunity to have 2 representatives play in the tournament to qualify for the championship. And a few of these schools actually ended up having 2 representatives. Blue Springs South is another incredibly strong team, and they actually had both of their teams qualify, and we'll get into how their second team qualified towards the end. We have Marshall High School, who came out of nowhere. They, going into week 5, I believe, had 17 points due to some clerical issues. Once we've got that cleared up, they went all the way from 17th place up to becoming the first seed out of their group with 129 points. We have Waynesville High School, which finished with 123 points. Van Horn High School finished with 119. Sykeston High School with 114. Smet Jesuit, North County R1, Webb City, Hollister, St. Louis University High School, Parkway South, Republic High School, also known as Retmo, I'll call them that a couple times today, St. Louis University High School's number 2 team, Blue Springs, and Central R3's second team. Those were our 16 representatives that qualified through regular season play. Now, the way that they did that was we played 10 drops, 2 each week on the maps that I showcased before, and I'll get back to in a little bit. And at the end of that 10 drop span, the top 2 teams in each group became the representatives from their groups. So number 1 and number 2 seed out of each group ended up qualifying. The 3 to 7 seeds in each group all played against each other in our last chance qualifiers. Now, the last chance qualifiers was played this past Thursday and was a slightly different format than what we had played the normal season on. Instead of trying to accumulate points through placement and eliminations and trying to be the best team at the end of that span, instead, these 4 teams qualified by being the number 1 place team. So all points were thrown out the window. Didn't matter how well you performed as long as you were the last team standing. And we got a couple different stories told because of this. Our first qualifier, Blue Springs South, was a team that prior to Marshall High School getting their clerical issues figured out, was a top 2 team in their group. And they had 116 points. As you can see, that is enough to put them in potentially top 5 in terms of total season placing. But because Marshall High School and the other representative from their group had more, they went from a top 2 team planning for the state championship to needing to fight for their lives in the last chance qualifier. And they took care of business there. And I had the opportunity to actually watch that match and see them, their last player, play a 1v3 in endgame, play around their opponent's shields when they were downed, and actually managed to clutch it out. So they took care of business. They know that they're actually a top 5 team going into this event. And now they need to prove it again as a representative from the last chance qualifiers. We also had Eureka High School and Central R3. Both of them were 3 seeds in their group. And they knew that they just had to get over that little bit of a lip before going into this championship event today. And they both qualified. So I'm excited to see what these teams can do, knowing that they were able to be a top 2 team in their groups and just needing that little bit of an extra help. And then my favorite part about the last chance qualifiers is our last team, Joplin High School. Because this was a team that, if you look at their standings from the regular season, only 31 points in terms of their eliminations on that roving banner that we'll pull to every so often. They only had 8 eliminations in the season. And half of those eliminations came in the first week of competition. So what this team did is they banded together, said, hey, regular season doesn't matter. We managed to qualify as maybe one of the lower seeds from our group, but we know we're a better team. So they managed to stick together and actually end up getting a win and qualifying as one of our last chance qualifier candidates. So I'm excited to see what they can do, knowing that they have the potential to get these wins, to play with the big dogs, to get these types of hard-fought struggles and get the placement points, get the elimination points. So if they can consistently do what they did during last chance qualifiers, I think they might be a sleeper pick. But ultimately, that's up for these teams to decide. Now, in terms of the format that we've got going on today, is starting at 10:30 in about 6 odd minutes, we will begin dropping onto Storm Point. Storm Point is a very lush map. It takes place on a beach. There's rainbows all over the sky. There's all interesting flora and fauna all over the place. And these teams are going to attempt to win on that map. This was where, during the course of the regular season, our first drop each week played on. Then we'll have an hour-long break going into lunch and come back for drops 4 to 6, where we will go to World's Edge, which is slightly more cataclysmic, I might say, where we've got icy spires and explosions all over the place. We have molten, craggy valleys And it's really going to get our students and the players in this match into that mental headspace where, hey, we've got to close it out. This is the map that we're going to do it on. But there's actually a few different ways our students can win this tournament today. And that is through the following win conditions. As I mentioned before, they're going to accumulate points throughout today via placement, via eliminations. But in terms of how they actually win, one of them is very simple. Win condition number 2. Have the most points after 6 drops. Pretty simple stuff. The team that is consistently the best throughout the course of the day deserves that win. However, there is an alternative win condition called the championship point threshold. Now, the way that the championship point threshold works is that any team that gets above 50 points throughout the course of today will be eligible to win the championship on their next win. So let's say, for instance, drop number 3 comes around, we play in Storm Point, and my team has 52 points. And one of the teams in front of us has 78 points. That team could continue to win every single drop, get top 2, top 3 placements, and just outscale us in terms of point accumulation by the end of 6 drops. But me, having a team that's above 50 points, if I get one single win before they do, I could snag that championship win. And this is a way to make sure that every single team still has that potential to win the championship, no matter the occasion. Now, in terms of how they get to that 50-point threshold, plenty of ways they can do it. They can either attempt to play a bunker-style composition, play it slow, go for placement points, try to consistently get like a top 3 to 5 placement, get eliminations where they come, or they can play more aggressive. Choose a composition that's more skirmish heavy, try to get a lot of elims early on so that you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. 1, you're getting elimination points. 2, you're eliminating the competition, so you get more placement off that. So each of our teams today are going to have to make that decision on really what do they value going into this match, because it's going to change over the course of the day. Some teams might start more aggressive early on, and if they get eliminated, maybe get like a 10th, 11th place finish, they might want to reel it back in, attempt to read the map a little bit more, try to get better zones, and try to get the wins from there. Or we might see the opposite. We might see some teams start out slowly, and as they get more comfortable, read their opponents, start to pick up speed as time goes on. And that's the beautiful thing about what we've got with Battle Royales, is that it's not just one single game that defines these players and these teams. It's how they're adapting over the course of the day. How are they adjusting their compositions? How are they playing around zones and circles? And how do they play with the randomness that Battle Royales have? Because the best teams, the most consistent teams, they're able to deal with those issues and still come out on top. So starting in the next couple minutes, we'll go into our first drop on Storm Point, and I'll break down a bunch of the action for a few of our teams, let you know exactly what's going on, getting into the action, and letting you all know exactly what the gameplay looks like in Apex Legends. So I look forward to talking to y'all in a couple minutes. Alrighty, and we're getting into game number one, drop number one on Storm Point. This is a map that has a lot of wide open spaces where teams that take high grounds are able to get a ton of free damage off on their opponents. And Apex Legends is a game where it's all about risk versus reward, where teams have to make the decision early on in engagement. Is this a fight I want to take? Is this a fight I want to commit to? Is this a fight where I want to be close range or long range? Is this a fight where if I continue taking it, my team has the potential to get eliminated? Because at the end of the day, in Apex Legends, you are attempting to be the most consistent team possible. And each of our teams are now selecting their characters for our first match. Our first team that we're going to be looking through the eyes of is going to be Francis Howell North. That will be team number one on your screen. And as I transition into the game, you'll be able to see our maps, exactly what it is our students are dropping on, and each team in terms of number 1 to 20, where they are in the game. Now, early on, what we're seeing is actually quite a number of teams dropping early. Everybody's avoiding down beast like the plague. It's a very popular hot drop, and we're actually seeing a ton of different teams all dropping on the same location here in the beginning sections, where plenty of these teams are looking to check and make sure that they're getting their loot early on, not losing any type of ground, and attempting to get whatever loadout they think is most beneficial to their team. And we're seeing a bunch of these top-end teams. They went places where nobody else is dropping. We actually see Francis Howell North went to a location where there's no other teams in the same stratosphere as them. They dropped pretty late, and they managed to actually get a location that's entirely for them. We're seeing already that they're getting a bunch of mid to long range guns because they don't need to take these early engagements against their opponents. So we're seeing here the Catalyst player for Francis Howell North has an R301 and a Havoc rifle. Both these guns are kind of better from mid to longer ranges, and they off of drop knew that nobody else was going to come this way. So let's check in with another team then. Let's go Team 17, what they've got going on. Team 17 is going to be Blue Springs South 2, one of our last chance qualifying teams. We're seeing a very similar thought process in terms of loadout acquisition, where the Flatline is a longer range gun. It's a gun that when you're taking mid to long range fights, you have type of high ground, you can try and pick off your opponents, try and get some damage off on them, and force them to use their heals. And then the other gun that they've got in their hands, the R99, better for close range engagements. Melt shields, melt health pulls. So if somebody tries to drop on you, do you try to drop on them? It's more consistent in terms of damage output at those closer ranges. Take a look. We've got SLU High School number 2. Another team that managed to get an uncontested drop. This is actually the Wall, a very popular drop location for a lot of teams. And I think we're already seeing what some of these teams value is early on, we saw many teams avoid super high value loot drop locations like where SLU is right now. And that is because they don't want to be the team that ends up losing it. So we're seeing a lot of these usually hot drop locations around the map that are just completely isolated. Right here, this is a drop where it's usually you've got 20, 30 people hot dropping if this was your casual matches or your ranked matches, and there's very few shots being taken from these teams. And we're seeing Francis Howell North actually attempting to take this fight. This is our #1 team from the regular season facing off against SLU High School 2. And we're seeing SLU High is already being forced to run away. This is a composition that SLU High has got set up where it's actually very popular to play in these types of close range engagements. They've got a Gibraltar who is more of a support tank style character where he's got a big shield. He's able to stop his teammates from taking damage. And then you can see those little bit of traps from the screen of this Pathfinder where that's the caustic. That's his entire game plan, is force you to walk into him so that you're constantly taking damage. You don't want to end up pushing into him because of the damage over time effects. So I wonder how Francis Howell North is going to take this fight. They actually went all the way around to the other side of the of this doorway so that they could get around those caustic traps. It's a very clever way that they played around the bunker style composition that SLU High has got, and they're already attempting to take out their team. That's the third team eliminated, SLU High too, and that's why Francis Howell North is one of these top level teams. And they're actually getting already pushed by another team. We've got team #4, Waynesville High School, actually managing to take out a couple members of that Francis Howell North team that I was just giving so much praise. And this is what we call a third party in the industry, where Francis Howell North just took so much time trying to take out SLU High that they weren't able to reset when another team came through. So Waynesville actually manages to take out one of the top dogs very early on. That means that both SLU High 2 and Francis Howell North get 0 placement points for this round. I know that Francis Howell North managed to get a squad elimination, so that's at least 3 points on the board for them. But they're going to have to readjust their game plan, because in a battle royale, it's definitely better to always want to be ahead the curve as opposed to playing catch up. And we're going to take a look at the map state now as we go into our second set of circles. And we're already seeing a little bit of contention here in the top right corner at Command Center, where we've got Gert, Wiggle Duck, a bunch of these teams. We're actually going to hop right on in, see if we can't get some of that gameplay and showcase it for all these teams. Here we've got team #6, Sykeston High School, taking a fight right on the edge of zone, where they are fighting off against team #10. It's looking like Hollister High School in a real good off angle. We've got the ace managing to crack one of the shields. 2 of them are down, so we're actually seeing a squad wipe coming out from team #10, and they are also getting third party. This is team #4, the team we were just watching, Waynesville. Waynesville is having excellent rotations on this map. We saw them take out Francis Howell North in the third party, and now they're about to attempt to take out Team 10 Hollister in the same exact way. We've got the Conduit player being forced to run away and give up their teammates. And unfortunately, that looks to be a squad wipe right there, because the last player from Hollister was forced to go into zone, try and play their life by jumping on the jump pad, but unfortunately it just was not enough for them, and so they got eliminated. Now, this is looking like Waynesville is one of the teams to beat in this first game, because they're already managed to get all of these eliminations early on, managing to take out a few of the top-end teams. And there's actually another fight taking place over in the bottom left side of the map. See if we can't jump over to that. We got Team 18 here, Eureka High School, taking a fight against Team #5, who's actually just running away. Now, Team 18, Eureka. This is another team from our last chance qualifiers, where they had the potential to be one of the top dogs out of their group, but they just couldn't get over that last couple point threshold. And they're choosing a composition that is more well known as bunker. I've mentioned it a couple times when we were setting up into this game, and a bunker style composition is entirely based around taking as little damage as possible, forcing your opponents to use more resources when you're inside a building or you get set up on the outside of circle, where they're fighting into things that recharge, things that respawn, and they're not taking away your health economy, making you use either med kits or shield batteries or anything like that in order to get the eliminations. And the way that we're seeing this specific style of bunker go on is we've got the Gibraltar that I mentioned before. He's got a big shield. That's entire concept is to take this damage. And we're seeing the Rampart already from this team where they just build pieces of equipment that are designed to take the damage. And you can shoot through it, but they can't shoot you. You see that little blue shield right there? It's something that's difficult to play into. But they're actually getting forced out by their opponents here at Team 5, who that ultimate that you just saw was the Bangalore ultimate. The entire concept for that ultimate is to flush people out, do a little bit of crowd control, force them to get stunned a little bit so that you can either take that space or get around them. And what we're seeing from Team 5 here, Van Horn, is that they actually use that to get out, to disengage from the fight. And the reason why we're seeing that is because the other team managed to set up a good bunker, right? They had a Gibraltar so that they could throw up the shield whenever. They already set up some Rampart barricades so that you'd have to shoot through that in order to take the fight. So they just used that Bangalore to disengage, try and get around to the other side of the circle, where you saw them pop that balloon so that they could go and fly around the corner right before they got cut off by the zone. And now they're actually in a pretty good situation here on the dead side of the map. And another team that we're seeing on dead side is looking like, I believe, Joplin, team number 20. Oh my. This is what we're calling the dead zone, right? So there's a couple different ways that the theory works when you're attempting to push into these mid and end game fights. And right here, we're seeing a team that they lost a couple of their players early. Joplin High School was one of the teams that we knew that they were going to struggle a little bit just based off of how many eliminations they had in the regular season, but they had a very good push in their last chance qualifiers. So now their last player who's left alive doesn't have the ability to actually revive his teammates in this situation. There's too many teams around him. So he's playing, or they're playing this type of dead zone location where nobody's going to go check for them. And while the other teams are fighting, they're able to just rack up those placement points as time goes on. So we'll go and check a different team and check in on them if they manage to come back. So team number 8, we've got North County being forced to run away from their opponents. We're seeing that team 16 here, Central High School, another one of those last chance qualifier teams, managed to set up a great position here on top of this building where they've got high ground. We see the 30-30 in the Octane's hands. This is a long range weapon that is just consistently chunking their opponents. It does around, I believe, 70 damage per body shot, which based off how many shields you have, how much health you have, is maybe around like half to a little over a third of a person's health. So from long ranges, it's a very difficult gun to play around because it's got 12 shots. If you're managing to consistently hit body shots or headshots, you can just continue whittling down your opponent's health, take out their shields, force them to use their batteries early on so that when you're actually going for the fight, you know that you're able to actually get the elims. And we're seeing them take a couple pot shots here against a team that has a pretty good bunker, but bang, right there. You heard that little crack sound effect? That means that that person lost all their shields, and now they're forced to run away. And we're seeing that's Team 19 here attempting to play their lives. So looking back at the map, we're seeing that it's getting a little bit closer, right? Everybody's being forced a little bit further in. They're not really in their comfort spots anymore. And they've got to take these fights. So Team 16, we've got Central, the team we were just watching just a few seconds ago. How quickly the tides can turn. This building that was a place that they were having a lot of fun with is suddenly super scary because they got jumped on by another team. And unfortunately, we've got the Mirage player going down. They tried to play their life, get one elimination on their way out, because at the end of the day, that could be the difference maker of your team getting that point or not, is trying to get that crack, try to get that elim. And we've got Team 19 here. We've got Our other central team is a little bit of friendly fire right there from teams from the same school. And we're seeing them attempt to now take over the control of this building. Because that's one of the things that you'll see a lot with these teams, is that they get to push inside this building, eliminate that team, get close to a top 10 placement, and now it's their building to lose. So unfortunately, it's a little bit out of zone for the next circle, but for every team that's rotating and has to go on the outside, go through that little bit of a river, they have to push through this building's sight lines. So over and over, this team is going to get the chance to get some chunks, and every other team also knows that. So this is a team that is not really styled for a bunker style composition being pushed in, and you saw that horizontal go out to try and force them out of position. But unfortunately, this is not where Central's team really has its strengths. Taking these types of skirmishes from close range, their Bloodhound is more of an info-based character, so he doesn't have much that's going to help him out here, and they're getting pinched by two different teams. This is looking like a really rough fight. They have to take one of them somewhere, and unfortunately, their Pathfinder's the last one who's left alive, and it doesn't look like they're going to be making it much further out of here. And so we're seeing the team that actually took them out. We've got team number 1 here. Actually, that's Francis Howell North. Waynesville didn't take them out earlier. I wonder what team they actually eliminated. But Francis Howell North is still in this game, got a ton of eliminations, and now they're in top 10. What that means is that every single placement from here on out is worth more than one elimination. So we're seeing that this circle is getting very close, and we've got the team that has Wiggle Duck on it. I believe that's Waynesville. Let's take a check on them, see if that's still the team. It is. They are perfectly centered here in the center of circle, so they can see everyone else. Now, unfortunately for them, team that we were just talking about, Francis Howell North, is in that position. So this position from Waynesville is very powerful because the way that this endgame circle is situated is that there's very little cover for our teams to look at. So Waynesville here actually has ways to prevent shots from all different sides while these teams are fighting from the angles. And we're seeing Francis Howell North try to take this fight again. They pulled up the catalyst wall to try and cut off the sight lines from the other teams fighting on the left side of the map. And now we're going to see if this position from Waynesville is strong enough to prevent this push. Because now it's just a wide open fight. Whoever can take more damage is going to be the team that ends up winning. We see that the Bangalore player is actually forced to back up, try and get their shields back up. And the first player goes down on the side of Francis Howell. So we've got a couple teams here all looking to take this fight. And Waynesville actually manages to get around the corner and eliminates that team. So their position is just getting stronger and stronger. They're getting a little bit of a reset. They're still playing around this bridge masterfully, and they know that there's Bangalore on the other side of this smoke. So they're just going to try and get this elimination, push in together as a team, see if they can't get a couple limbs here. So what we're seeing from the other side here at Team 8, North County, is they're being forced to run in 3 different directions. So they're just slowly getting bled out by the fact that they're on opposite sides of this bridge. So that's another elimination going the way of Waynesville High School. And each of these death boxes is essentially a recharge for these teams. There's something that is known as shield swapping, pretty high level technique that is core for a lot of the professional players, is trying to get elimination, try to get to a person's death box, and even if you lose your shields, that little red bar above their health, you can just take it from one of your fallen opponents. So what they did there is there's a ton of death boxes around this bridge, by the way. This is truly where our end game is looking to be. And you take their shields, you take all their meds, so that when you win the fight, congratulations, now you get the reset, right? You take all their ammo and you can just move on with your life. So here we're in our top 3 endgame position. Waynesville has a pretty good, solid position here. We've got Team 3 Marshall High School, also is set up really strong around this rock. And eventually, this team is going to get forced to push in this Waynesville unit that we've been watching all day. You actually see them attempt to bait Marshall to go somewhere else by throwing up that balloon. But unfortunately, right now, they're the fish. So even though they've had such a strong position all day, they now need to push into somebody else that had a very strong setup. So this Marshall team that we're looking at right now was the other side of the fight, where all those teams that were on the left side of the map all duking it out. This was the team that won. So in a similar position where Waynesville managed to win the fights, get all those resets, they had the same thing happen to them. And now we're seeing them attempt to hunt. They saw where the shots were coming out from that last team, and now they want to get that last limb. But unfortunately, there's 3 teams there. Not what that Lobo player was hoping for from Marshall. Now they're going to get knocked down. It's going to be their 2 teammates up to see who wins this. And we still got Waynesville refusing to be the team that goes out here. They're actually trying to push, take an isolated fight with that rock in this tree on the right side. So it's just this one fight going on. And we're seeing this is where the strength of the Bangalore and endgame is. So Bangalore is a character where we saw her ultimate earlier on, forcing people out, but she's also got this smoke screen that she throws out, where she can force your opponents to go through a little bit of fog of war. And we've got Waynesville attempting to push through. We've got one last team eliminated, and they're the team to beat right now. One person's already down on the other side. We've got team number 5. This is Van Horn, team that we looked at earlier on, and they're eliminated. And Waynesville actually manages to take the first game of the day. So incredibly strong start from them. We saw them early on push a couple fights, get a couple third parties, and they also end strong. Waynesville managing to put on a clinic in this first game, and I'm excited to see what this team looks like for the rest of the day. But with that, we're going to go into a little 10-minute break. I'll be back in 5 minutes to break down what the placements were for the teams that we couldn't watch, how things are looking, and what to look forward to going into game number 2. So stick around. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We will be back in a few minutes. Have to set one small technical issue aside, and then we will begin, hopefully on time, at 11:07. See you soon.